How did Aria T'Loak lose control of Omega? After months of deceit and a tenuous partnership with the Elusive Man, the supposed mutual alliance between Omega and Cerberus abruptly comes to an end. Greetings spacefarers, I'm Michael, and welcome to MTJ Disorder's Mass Effect Lore, a passion piece on all things Mass Effect. If you are a fan of science fiction, gaming, and other action-adventure related media, then feel free to like this video and subscribe for more. For months now, Cerberus had manipulated Aria into handling their dirty work, whilst simultaneously placing her at the forefront of the galaxy's most wanted. By causing chaos and sowing distrust among some of her most loyal supporters, the Elusive Man successfully destabilized Omega's power in the Terminus Systems. Why exactly? Well, in this final entry detailing the life of Aria, we'll break down the events leading up to the Reaper War and try to unravel the reasoning behind one of Cerberus's greatest mistakes. This is part 4 of the story of Aria T'Loak. Previously, we learned through a complex and sprawling series of events that Aria was initially manipulated into working with Cerberus to help cover up the catastrophe that was Paul Grayson. And though the primary method to achieve this resulted in the death of Aria's daughter Lizelle, Aria continued to work with them regardless, knowing an all-out war with Cerberus over revenge would not benefit Omega long term. But as all those who side with the devil eventually learn, it always comes with a cost. When the mysterious Reaper-like creatures that attacked Omega arrived at the station, it was aboard a routine Cerberus convoy, and though Aria's forces appeared to have a handle on the situation, a Cerberus cruiser was conveniently right on their heels. The ship, named the Cerberus, captained by General Oleg Petrovsky, claimed to be here to assist, but Aria was rightly suspicious of their timely arrival and sensed something was awry. Soon after, Aria receives a transmission from none other than the Elusive Man himself. He warns her that Cerberus has been experimenting with Reaper technology, and in doing so, they've created something new, a twisted breed of husk known as the Adjutants, the same creatures that are now running loose on Omega. One of their containment facilities located beyond the Omega-4 relay had suffered a breach, and the creatures were out of control. This understandably made Aria furious. To her, this is proof of Cerberus's reckless obsession with controlling powers they barely understand. She calls the Elusive Man a fool for meddling with Reaper tech, but the Elusive Man is unfazed, defending Cerberus's actions as necessary, an attempt to learn and ultimately master the enemy. He then delivers a chilling warning: more adjutants are on their way to Omega, and unless Aria works with Cerberus, she'll have no hope of stopping them. Aria eventually forces herself to join forces with General Oleg Petrovsky and one of his agents, Colonel Raymond Ash. To her disgust upon first meeting, she finds them mutilating and decapitating corpses. This gruesome act makes sense only moments later when the lifeless body of a nearby Solarian begins convulsing, mutates, and transforms into one of the dreaded adjutants. Forced to act quickly, Petrovsky and Ash cut it down before the infection can spread further. Aria, already unnerved by the horror of the adjutants, begins losing her temper as the Colonel, without hesitation, begins barking orders at her soldiers, undermining her authority on her own station. Aria, never one to tolerate insubordination, acts instantly. With a surge of biotic power, she slams Ash against the wall and has him locked away, vowing he'll remain in chains until the crisis has passed. The General does little to protest, which doesn't seem all that suspicious at this point. With the threat escalating, Aria and Petrovsky rally a fleet to defend Omega. Shortly after, an enemy armada of adjutant-controlled vessels emerges from the relay. Petrovsky insists the creatures won't risk damaging their prey, that they won't fire on ships full of potential victims, but he is proven wrong almost immediately as the adjutants open fire without hesitation. Aria, ever the pragmatist, suggests mining the Omega-4 relay to cut them off, but Petrovsky dismisses this idea as too slow. Instead, he gives a bold and reckless order. The Cerberus will enter the relay itself, striking at the invasion's source deep in the galactic core. Aria objects, but her protests fall on deaf ears. She knows full well what Commander Shepard went through on the other side of that relay, and her concerns lie with Omega. Nonetheless, she does reluctantly accompany Petrovsky and his forces, and after rescuing a Cerberus team stranded on Avernus station, Aria fights alongside Petrovsky in the heart of the base. She pushes her biotics to their limit, shielding her allies against wave after wave of adjutants, but the effort leaves her drained. These adjutants are an incredibly relentless foe, and when she finally collapses due to fatigue, Petrovsky seizes his opportunity. Once Aria awakens, she finds herself bound with biotic dampeners. Petrovsky approaches and plays her a message from Omega, revealing the final betrayal. In her absence, Colonel Ash escaped custody and butchered everyone in Omega control. At that very moment, Cerberus reinforcements stormed the station, seizing Omega in a swift and decisive coup. Aria T'Loak, the untouchable queen of Omega, had been outmaneuvered. Her casual petulance finally caught up with her. Imprisoned aboard the Cerberus, Aria begins to connect the pieces. The adjutant outbreak she realizes may not have been an accident at all, but part of the Elusive Man's design, a calculated play to weaken Omega and make it ripe for the taking. Its strategic importance rivals that of the Citadel, and is one of the largest providers of refined element zero in the galaxy. She shares these suspicions with Petrovsky, but the General doubles down, citing Omega's importance as the gateway to one of the safest places in the galaxy, the galactic core. How foolish she had been. A rare episode of clouded judgment from the calculated Pirate Queen. The loss of Lizelle had taken a toll, and this was the result, but no more. Now, with complete clarity, Aria calmed herself and began to focus. When the General departs to speak privately with the Elusive Man, she seizes her chance. With ruthless efficiency, she breaks free of the restraints, cuts through Cerberus security, and single-handedly seizes control of the Cerberus. There's nothing quite like a pissed-off biotic. Seemingly defeated, Petrovsky is taken hostage and, under threat of watching his crew vented into space, is forced to return the ship to Omega. But the General proves more cunning than she expected. He manages to slip Colonel Ash a coded warning, and by the time they arrive, Cerberus is waiting. Aria manages to slip aboard the station, but she is forced to retreat into the slums to rally Omega's gangs and prepare for all-out war. Oddly enough, Colonel Ash had her dead to rights, but the General pushed her to safety at the last minute. Clearly he isn't lying when he says he admires her. A mistake on the General's part? Only time will tell. Nonetheless, Aria is back on Omega. What follows is a short but brutal guerrilla campaign. Aria unites the fractured underworld, launching relentless ambushes across the station's endless warrens. Petrovsky, unable to root her out, changes his tactics. He withdraws most of his troops, disguises his elite squad in mercenary armor, and lays a trap. Aria, however, sees through the ruse and sets one of her own. She sends plague-ridden mercenaries into their midst, sparking chaos that allows her to slip into Afterlife itself. But there, tragedy strikes. Colonel Ash had smuggled an adjutant into the building. He promptly loses control, and it tears through Aria's inner circle, killing her trusted soldier and friend, Lieutenant Anto. Petrovsky takes exception to Colonel Ash's questionable tactics, and the two seemingly turn on each other. In the following chaos, Aria biotically hurls the creature outside, only for it to infect Ash before she crushes it for good. In the aftermath of the carnage, Petrovsky makes his final move. He reveals a Cerberus fleet has surrounded Omega, weapons primed to burn the station level by level if Aria refuses to surrender. For Aria, Omega is more than a fortress. It is her identity, her throne, the one thing she cannot afford to see destroyed. Faced with annihilation, she concedes. Omega falls to Cerberus. But as she withdraws, Aria leaves Petrovsky with a promise, a warning that echoes across the station: she will return. It is around this time the Reaper invasion begins. After losing Omega, Aria retreats to the Citadel, forced into a kind of gilded exile. She hides out in Purgatory, a nightclub she despises, constantly under the eye of C-Sec and stripped of the power she once wielded. Bitter and restless, she swears vengeance on Cerberus for stealing her throne. But even Aria knows the Reapers take priority. To survive, the galaxy needs every army it can get, even mercenaries. So she summons Commander Shepard with a proposition: unite the Blue Suns, Eclipse and Blood Pack under her banner. In return, she promises their forces for the war effort, and eventually for the fight to reclaim Omega. Shepard's success or failure with the Merc leaders plays out in different ways, but the result is the same: Aria gains an army. To her, they are a force unafraid to fight dirty, willing to do what respectable militaries won't. Whether it's putting Dana Vosk in his place, manipulating Grill and the Blood Pack, or playing Eclipse leadership against itself, Aria's hand is always in the shadows, pulling the strings. Though confined and frustrated, she proves her influence still reaches deep into the galaxy's underworld. From exile, Aria T'Loak transforms mercenary gangs into a war asset, reminding Shepard, and the Council, that even stripped of Omega, she remains a force to be reckoned with. And after providing Shepard with valuable assets and important intel, Aria now has a favour to call in. At last, she makes her move to reclaim Omega. She enlists Commander Shepard to spearhead the assault, offering everything in return: ships, mercenaries, and Ezo, but on one condition: the Commander will fight at her side, alone. She claims to not care for Shepard's companions, but really it just seems she wants Shepard all to herself. After giving them the rundown on the plan of attack, they meet up with Aria's fleet and begin the assault. Using a captured Cerberus cruiser, Aria and Shepard infiltrate the blockade through a surprise attack. Once this is successfully achieved, the signal is given for their ragtag fleet to pass through the relay and join the battle. This plan almost worked flawlessly, but Petrovsky had not been idle. Omega's now upgraded defences crippled Aria's ship, forcing her and Shepard to crash land onto the station. From there, the battle for Omega begins. Aria's first step is to disable Cerberus's defences, rallying what few soldiers survive. Along the way, she reunites with Nyreen Kandros, who you'll remember from previous videos as her former lover turned enemy, and it is revealed she is now the leader of the Talon's mercenary gang, one of the only surviving cells of resistance on Omega. Reluctant allies, the three of them push deep into Omega, with Nyreen fighting for its civilians, while Aria pursues only her throne. Shepard appears to be here purely to hold the fragile alliance intact. Together, they ignite a rebellion. After taking back one of her secret bases and securing the Talon's own headquarters, Aria seizes the station's comms and broadcasts her return, calling on Omega's people to rise against their occupiers. Along the way, it is discovered that Cerberus were not only responsible for the creation of the adjutants, but had continued their experiments whilst occupying Omega, and if you haven't already learned this about Cerberus by now, predictably they once again lost control, and the adjutants joined the battle. Aria and her companions now had two enemies to fight. Cerberus, however, is nothing but resourceful and utterly relentless, putting up incredible resistance every step of the way. In a bold attempt to bring down force fields keeping civilians trapped across the station, Shepard is eventually forced into a moral choice. The force field's source of power also supplies environmental controls to many sections of the station, and so Shepard must choose to either obey Aria's command and sacrifice civilians, or heed Nyreen's plea to protect them. Either way, the shields fall, and the rebellion surges. The companions continue to push through the retreating forces, heading straight for the head of the Beast, who has strategically isolated himself at the seat of Aria's power, Afterlife. And just as they make the final push and clear up the remainder of Cerberus's forces, tragedy once again follows. Nyreen, who spots an adjutant swarm closing in on defenseless civilians and several of their overwhelmed soldiers, sacrifices herself, leaving Aria furious and unchained. In her rage, she tears through the Cerberus troops with unmatched biotic fury, charging aimlessly into the middle of Afterlife, but Petrovsky is one step ahead and ensnares her in yet another stasis trap. Shepard, though, after fighting waves of Cerberus defenders, eventually frees her, and together they storm the main floor of Afterlife. The general, all but defeated, and in a last-ditch effort unleashed his final weapon, a battalion of completely subservient adjutants, who, though formidable, are not enough to match Aria's fury and Shepard's heroism. Cerberus is crushed. Defeated, Petrovsky surrenders, but Aria isn't satisfied. She pins him down with her biotics, savouring the chance to choke the life from the man who stole her kingdom, manipulated her trust, and, though not directly responsible, played his part in her daughter's death. Whether he lives or dies depends on Shepard's influence, mercy, execution, or vengeance. Either way, Aria is restored to her throne, and can be very grateful to Commander Shepard for their assistance in a variety of ways. At last, she addresses Omega's people. Her message is clear. Depending on Shepard's influence, it is either a cry for unity, we are Omega, or a brutal warning.
Don't fuck with Omega.
Aria T'Loak has reclaimed her empire. She honours her promise, sending her fleet and her resources to aid the galactic war, but she does make one thing certain: Omega belongs to her, and no one will ever take it from her again. It's been a long and complex rise for the Pirate Queen of Omega, from her mysterious history as an Asari commando to her exile and the bloody war to reclaim her throne. Aria T'Loak's story is one of lawless power, regretful loss, and merciless determination. She has ruled Omega through fear and respect, forged fragile alliances, and reminded the galaxy that survival doesn't just belong to the noble, but also to the ruthless. It very much mirrors Mass Effect's core themes of Paragon versus Renegade. In the end, whether she showed mercy or vengeance, one truth is unshakable: Aria is Omega. And so concludes our journey through the life of one of Mass Effect's most unforgettable figures. If you've enjoyed this series, consider joining me for more explorations into the galaxy's hidden corners, unsung heroes, and infamous legends. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell notification icon to be informed of the next video. Keeler Salai, my friends, and until next time,
I should go.